Okay, the reading from Emmett Fox is entitled The Inevitable Reckoning. And when you understand that this present life is only one day in your long life, and that at the change called death, you simply disappear unto the next plane to come back again later on, perhaps several hundred years later. And then the events of this particular life appear in their true proportion, and then you begin to have dominion. The events of this life will not appear less important because of your new knowledge, but they will no longer intimidate you because you will know that you can control them. No seeming misfortune will any longer have power to break your heart or weaken your courage. You will understand life as the wondrous opportunity and the glorious gift that it is. It is true that when you return, you will have to meet the same types of problems, but the conditions will be utterly different. Also, you will probably meet some of your present associates again, particularly if there is an emotional link, either of love or hatred between you. Love will take care of itself, but you must get all hatred out of your heart if you do not want to renew disagreeable contacts. A thorough understanding of this doctrine makes us more tolerant. It leads us to do everything we can to make the path of others easier so as to facilitate their personal evolution and that of the race. In our own lives, we face up to our difficulties courageously, knowing that to run away is to postpone the day of reckoning. And there's a short scripture from Revelations chapter 2, verse 23. All the churches shall know that I am he which searches the veins, the reins and hearts, and I will give unto every one of you according to your works. And those are the words of Emmett Fox.
Thank you. So the title of the talk today is Here, There, and Everywhere, Living Righteously as a Panentheist. Now, we've been talking in ways that include the concept of panentheism, but it's been, I think, at least a couple, 3 years since I've mentioned the term. So let me start by defining what we're talking about and then going from there. So from the various online resources, definition of panentheism: the belief or doctrine that God is greater than the universe and includes it and interpenetrates it. Or another way of looking at it in simplicity is God is inside me, God is me, and God is everything. And it's a concept that started in the early 1800s, but really didn't gain traction until 1980s, 1990s, and now it's much more commonly discussed. There's no single religion that I'm aware of, and in Google search there isn't any, that is openly panentheist. But there are many religions that have believers in panentheism somewhere within. Buddhism, Hinduism, Christianity among them. A difference from what I'll call traditional Christianity or conservative Christianity and panentheism is Christianity says, there's God, and we're here and we're going to hell unless we vow to follow Jesus, and then God will welcome us. Whereas panentheists don't have that exclusionary approach. God, the universe, everything, us, the cats that you'll see wandering around here, the trees outside, they're all divine. A shorthand that we often use here for those who are fairly new is we're all God stuff, or we're all star stuff. Yeah. Father Richard Rohr, whom we refer to often, regards himself as a panentheist. And in fact, if you research Father Rohr and panentheism online, you'll find all sorts of Christian writers, generally fairly conservative, who are heavily critical of him, essentially saying he's leading people astray, they're going to go to hell. But that's not where we're coming from. And I just want to remind everybody, your walk, your spiritual walk is your own. I'm sharing from mine and from what I gather others and other writers have, but it's not that we expect you to follow this if you're with us. This is just all of us walking, seeking our own way in the midst of earthly things and in the midst of the broader spirituality. So, one of the wonderful quotes from Father Rohr is, "What if Christ refers to an infinite horizon that pulls us from within and pulls us forward too? What if Christ is another name for everything in its spiritual fullness?" And he goes on to say that the essential function of religion is to radically connect us with everything. And we can say he's somewhat critical of the limiting approach to Christianity. He says, if you think you are privately saved or privately enlightened, then you are neither saved nor enlightened. That if we allow a cosmic notion of Christ, and this is something that he argues for, that Christ has come in many forms to all the various peoples of this earth, but always with the same message of divine love. And he says he sort of thinks of the earth being drenched in God. And it says instead of saying that God came into the world through Jesus, maybe it would be better to say Jesus came out of an already Christ-soaked world. And referring to unity or the science of living, where they believe that we're following the teachings of the Christ Spirit as opposed to necessarily teachings of one man. And it's interesting, there are in Latin America, there are several tribes, remote tribes that have been stumbled upon by missionaries who have stories of this guy who showed up out of nowhere to teach them about love. And sometimes that person was named Jesus or something like that. And these are tribes that have never heard of Christianity at all back when this happened. We're talking many, many eons ago. And sometimes this guy was called Tomas. And there are many stories of St. Thomas appearing in out-of-the-way places long after he allegedly passed on. Now, Rohr also presents an interesting concept that the eternal Christ, or the Christ light, however you want to think of this being who teaches love and connection with this great divine, is a superconductor of divine energies or divine love into this world, that he ramps down the, if you will, the power, the punch of pure divine love, so that we as mere mortals wrapped up, oh, this is coming loose, wrapped up in our coats of skin, can feel it and absorb it without being blown away. Yeah. And yet, if you think about it, people you've met who had that moment of divine revelation, such as George Fox did in what we discussed several weeks ago, talk about almost literally being speechless, being unable to comprehend. Oh, and Brother Mandis too, in his recounting of his initial direct contact with the divine. There's no words that they can explain, that they can use to explain, because it is so powerful, so overwhelming, the experience of all that divine love. I suspect perhaps it's a little like walking through the desert, as has happened a few times according to the Bible, and being presented with this huge burning bush that never extinguishes, and that voice comes out of it to tell you what to do next. That would be sort of gobsmacking, wouldn't it? Rohr also notes that St. Paul, in a quote in the Bible, and just a reminder, there's many errors in translation and intentional forgeries in the New Testament, but he has the quote from Paul in Colossians: "There is only Christ. He is everything, and he is in everything." So, panentheism. There was a conversation on Reddit about panentheism, and someone named Pixie79 wrote in, "I feel very strongly that this world, universe, matter is an illusion. I think everything is all spirit, and God is simply the emergent property of all creation. Basically, just love incarnate. I always felt the universe and all existence is based on love and beauty," which to me is a wonderful summation of the ultimate conclusion one can draw from panentheism. So, if we are panentheists, and I for one am, though I didn't know the term until I read it some years ago, what's a proper way for us to interact with here, there, and everywhere? Here, inside, there, and this entire universe which is already beyond our comprehension. The Peace Pilgrim talked about her revelation there. And for those of you unfamiliar with her, from the time she was a young lady, she made it her calling to walk the world with only a toothbrush and a comb. Literally walk the world, trusting the world to provide her needs every day. So sometimes she'd sleep in haylofts, sometimes someone would invite her into the home, trusting for her food, and telling everyone about God's love and our responsibility to care for all in God's love. So that wasn't, she called herself the Peace Pilgrim. She was seeking to bring peace, not just peace as we understand it, no wars, but peace within this entire divine environment. And she wrote, actually she talked and people would transcribe it, about her first realization of that. She was 16, walking through a woods, and she realized, oh, that tree is God. That rock, this mud is God. I'm part of God too. Think of the implications. So, what we must address as followers of the divine, and I'll say for those of us who are panentheists, but I think it applies to many of us, even if we aren't. How can we walk through life and create a life or live a life that gives maximum honor and gratitude to this divine energy, this divine love that activates us, activates everything that is everything. The respect for the divine universe, or the respect for all that is divinely created. As I was thinking about this problem, I was reminded of the numerous reports of visitors and sociologists commenting on the North American indigenous people about the commonality of giving thanks to all that provided the food they were eating. They would give thanks to the fish they caught. They would give thanks to the animal they had just killed to feed the village. They would give thanks to the corn that grew. They would give thanks to the fish, the small fish they were putting in with the corn seeds to give the fish to give the corn nutrients. What can we do? And that led me to reflect on the conservative Christians who have been seeking power and claim that their right as Christians is dominion over all of God's creations, and their definition of dominion is to cut down the forest, to drill oil anywhere they want, to slaughter animals, to refuse to protect other animals. I don't have a ready do-it list. I'm still feeling my way too, in terms of how to treat with honor, interact with honor, with all that is. But what I decided I could do is share a bit of what interactions I do, how I approach honoring this great existence. And you'll notice Emmett Fox is saying, this is one plane of God's existence. And then there are planes beyond, that are completely, shall we say, incomprehensible to us, because they're what we might call parallel universes. We don't know, but they're outside our ken, just as the shamanic reality is outside our understanding or ability to connect from here. But here is where we have the most opportunity to respond, to respect, to live with this divine existence of which we are a part. So, without any particular order, some of the things I do attempting to honor this creation, this existence, every day, and I try to do it twice a day, once in the morning, once in the evening, I give thanks and acknowledge the efforts of those who are on the other side, who have helped me today. The angels, the archangels, the divine proper, Pan, the ancients who've come before me, my ancestors, the spirits and entities who help out my spirit animals. I make sure, and I should say, I try to make sure that they realize I am grateful. So, in a sense, what we're talking about is ongoing gratitude. So think of it that way. Now, Phyllis and I, at least once a day, say the prayer of protection together, the one that, if you're new here, we'll be saying together a little later today. What a better way to start the day. And it always says at the end, and we are grateful. So acknowledging this all that is, this here, there, and everywhere, with gratitude one way or another. When I'm driving one of our vehicles, at least once during the trip, I thank them. I actually pat the dashboard and say thank you for your good service. And usually, they've been really good about giving us good service. And keeping me out of accidents a couple times when I made boneheaded moves. So I'm even more grateful. Food I'm eating, I try to remember to give thanks to whatever provided the protein, to the plants that provided their seeds that otherwise could have gone into the ground to provide more plants. I try, and best I can say is I do my best, but it's humanly faulted, to extend love and appreciation to all parts of creation. From the obvious, the air I'm breathing, the water that comes down from the sky, the water I'm drinking, to the air conditioning unit that's keeping us cool today, and is at this point 40 years old and still serving us well. To the sunflowers that are growing in our front lawn wild from the seeds that some birds dropped. It's a gorgeous thing to be able to look out my window and see those sunflowers. Then I do my best to expend caring to those pets who have, in one way or another, ended up being with us, choosing to be with us. They deserve to be well cared for, respected, loved. And this is where my greatest failing is coming, to try to send love to those who are intentionally causing harm to others, whether the others are people or animals or our earth or our universe. I'll tell you, that's tough. Sometimes the best I can say is, God, I haven't got it in me, but know that I'm aware that they deserve your caring and your guidance too. Now, with what Phyllis read today, the reminder that if we don't sort out our difficulties now, we get to come back and do it again, some other plane, some other existence, but the same problems. I can have even more sympathy for those who are really screwing up their lives, because they're going to have to do it again. Not just what Fox says, but I've heard it and felt it often enough. And similarly, you don't want, if at all possible, to have any unresolved issues with others in this life, because as Fox says, and as I've experienced in doing my own healings, you're going to face them one time or another, folks. You may as well take care of it now. And at the same time, you don't want to hang on so tight to the things in this world that you limit your own ability to be part of this wonderful panentheist existence. Years ago, I moved into another house, and there was something clearly wrong with it. Ultimately, we ended up having to do 3 exorcisms, because we found out later the mother of the family that had lived there before us had become a religious fanatic and slaughtered herself, committed suicide, and committed it in a way so it would be her children coming home from school who would discover her corpse. And she was still there. She was, I think we could literally say, crazy. She was hanging on, if I dare say, for dear life to that house, rather than moving on to someplace where she could heal. Remember, as you walk through life, however you approach your spiritual path, don't hang on so tight that you fail to learn your lesson, or that you're unable to move forward. And that leads me to the closing quote, because we can't know it all, we don't know it all, But if we try to control it, and I don't know who wrote this, to live the listening life is to open ourselves to surprise, to our routines being interrupted, and to paths we did not intend to walk, but that arrive at places of breathtaking beauty we otherwise might have missed. So, walk easy knowing that you are of God, you are in God, and God is you. And don't hang on to preconceived notions. Do your best to contribute to God's love, to the wonders of this existence. That's what I have to say today. So, anything someone wants to contribute? Ellie.
Enjoyed your talk. I didn't know there was a name or a word for it, as you described it. But here, there, and everywhere. It makes sense when you look at the notion that we're God stuff, star stuff. It kind of reminds me of Tinkerbell and pixie dust. It's everywhere. And glitter. Have you ever tried to clean up glitter? You're cleaning it up for years, literally. Anyway, reminded me of, when you were explaining it in your poem, reminded me of this little story or this explanation I read. It's a Jewish explanation. I read it in a book years ago, by, I don't know if he's a rabbi, but by a Jewish man. And if I find the book, I'll send a picture of it to you. But anyway, the thought of it, was different, conversations, different words, in the life of a Jewish person. And one of the concepts is about relationships, and it's a conversation between a Christian and a Jewish person. And so that's the context. Anyway, in this particular conversation, the Christian is asking the Jew, if he knows God or if he has a relationship with God. And doesn't give the Jewish person really a chance to speak. He says, "Oh, you guys are under the law," so you can kind of tell where the conversation, the tone of it. And, and it says near the end of the I don't know, maybe 8 paragraphs, that, if the Jewish person would have been able to speak, it would have been, I have a relationship with God. I do everything with him. I dance with him. I eat with him. I cry with him. I do everything with him. Versus, a Jewish person not necessarily knowing Christ, but God they know. And so, when I read that years ago, it gave me a different perspective on, what you just described. Not every religion looks at the Bible or Christianity the same, their relationship with the divine the same. And, throughout my life, I've had these windows of insight, if you will, of, oh, okay, so they're not traditional Christian, but that's okay. They still have the relationship with the divine. Whether you call it the divine, whether you call it God, whether you call it Yahweh, whether you call it the universe or goddess, there is still that relationship with the divine that people have. In AA, I mean, it's no secret that, they consider their divine experience higher power, whatever that higher power is for them, whether it's a doorknob, whether it's a rock, whatever it is, it's a higher power. And for me, when I first heard that, I thought, oh, how silly, a rock, a doorknob. Wait a minute, who am I to pass that judgment? Well, if that pet rock gets them through the day, then great. If the dog or a cat can get that person through the day where they can remain sober or strong or whatever, then great. But isn't that the purpose of the higher power to begin with? So anyway, I enjoyed your talk, and again, timely, as I had, questions this week on things. And before we get too far, I want to ask for prayer for Lori R. and Norm. She had to take Norm to the hospital today.
Oh dear.
Blood pressure was off the charts. The top and the bottom numbers. I don't know much more than that. So anyway, when I know more, I can, I can share more. But she hasn't eaten hardly anything today, so her migraines are off the charts. As anyway, just keep them in prayer. I'll reach out later tonight and then maybe send an updated thing to you, and then you can send it out to everybody.
Yes,
Thank
please
you.
do. Please do. Thank you. Anyone else with a contribution? No, maybe not. Maybe it's time to go into silence. Okay, so Debbie, what's going to happen is we're going to go into silent meditation for a few minutes and see what your internal connection with the divine has to communicate to you. And at some point I'll ring our little bell and then come on back, and then we'll move into our prayer requests. So let us go into our silence. So let us come to close with a benediction. Dear God, thank you for watching over us, for continuing to guide us to greater understandings and greater connections with you. Thank you for putting our feet on the right path, to be of service to you, to grow in you, to represent you, to lift up this world by our presence and our actions. We thank you for watching over us, for guiding our feet, our minds, our hearts as we depart from here, and for guiding us again to join again in this wonderful group as we seek to know more of you and share together and pray together next week. We say thank you, dear God, for all the good you've given and all the love. Amen.